Hey divas, I read a lot in January, and I did not sleep at all. I read 18 books in January, and that's not including the 2 I DNF'd. Just a disclaimer, if you like or love any of the books that I either DNF'd or rated low, that's okay. It's my opinion. Yeah, I don't know if you're the author or fans or family. The opinion was for other readers, not for you. So, yeah. The first book that I finished in January 2026 was World War Z, An Oral History of the Zombie War by Max Brooks. It is a sci-fi horror zombie book. I gave it 2.5 stars out of 5. I just don't think I loved the way that the story was told. It is a fiction book written as if it's nonfiction. It's told through a bunch of interviews with survivors of the zombie apocalypse. And after a while, it felt a bit repetitive. There's also a movie based on the book, but it's actually completely different. It just kind of has the same name and like 1 or 2 similarities. The next 4 books, so 2 through 5, are all the Vampire Diaries. So it's gonna be a bit of a speed run for the next few books. If you aren't familiar with the Vampire Diaries, while being very vague, it's a series about the relationship between Elena, Stefan, and Damon. And that's all I'm gonna tell you. Book number 2 of January is the first book of the Vampire Diaries, The Awakening by L.J. Smith. I gave it 2.25 stars out of 5. I didn't love the way it was written. It felt a bit empty. I know there is a lot that went into the making of the Vampire Diaries series, and I know people who have researched it have made videos, so if you want to know more about that, I feel like you can find the information fairly easily. Book number 3 is The Struggle by L.J. Smith. All of these books are also fantasy romance. I don't think I said that. I gave this one 2.5 stars out of 5, so it went up a whole 0.25%. I didn't have many opinions on this book. It still felt pretty empty. Book 4 is The Fury by L.J. Smith. Again, a fantasy romance. I gave this one 3 stars out of 5, so we're getting somewhere. This book is where the story finally seems to pick up. Feels more full and interesting, and I felt like at this point, I kind of just wish the first 3 books were one book. Book 5 is The Dark Reunion by L.J. Smith. Still fantasy romance, still 3 stars. I didn't know what to expect from this book after how the last book ended. This one is mostly in Bonnie's POV. The other 3 are all in Elena's POV. So that was interesting. The 4th book is probably the most interesting book so far. At this point in January, I entered my Ali Hazelwood era. Book number 6 is Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is a fantasy romance. I gave it 3.75 stars out of 5. So this is my second time reading Bride, and that's because I tried to read Mate, and I had no fucking clue who the main character of Mate was. It is an arranged marriage story between Misery Lark, a vampire, and Lo Morlan, an alpha werewolf. They get married as a peacekeeping alliance situation between the 2 species. I liked the story the first time, and I enjoyed it again. Book number 7, Mate by Ali Hazelwood. Another fantasy romance, 3.75 stars. Good book, interesting story, very horny. I enjoyed the perspective of the main character. I thought it was interesting to, I guess, read about her life experiences. This is the story of a human hybrid and an alpha werewolf fighting against the bonds of fate. Book 8, The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This is a contemporary romance. I gave it 2.75 stars out of 5. I did find it interesting to read about a scientist and an academic, but I didn't like the main character. I didn't like Olive. She got on my nerves at points. when a fake relationship between scientists meets the irresistible force of attraction, it throws one woman's theories about love into chaos. An occasionally cringe, very millennial, published Raylo fanfic. Book number 9, Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. Another contemporary romance, but this one I gave 4 stars out of 5. I really liked this one. This is a story about a competitive diver and an ace swimmer jumping into forbidden waters. I enjoyed the relationship between the main characters. I like the growth that the main character goes through with her sport and her relationships and with herself. And also it's very kinky. It is a very kinky book. Here comes my first DNF of 2026. I got abducted by aliens and now I'm in a rom-com by Kimberly Lemming. This is a sci-fi romance. The only reason that I read this book is because I wanted to read another book by the author, but I couldn't find it. So I picked this one up instead, and I fear that was a mistake. I DNF'd this book on page 69. No joke. At that point in the book, not only was the main character medically altered without her consent, her and 2 others are injected with a horny serum without anyone's consent, and it immediately makes them horny for each other. So, a summary of the book. A woman gets abducted by aliens for an intergalactic breeding thing between humans and another species of aliens. And the only reason that it is happening is because aliens A eradicated all of the women aliens of alien B. So that left them as a dying species. So alien A's answer to that was to abduct and medically alter humans to be compatible with the other species so that they could repopulate. After that, I took a hard left and I picked up the 3rd book in a series that I was reading last year and just didn't get to. Book 10 is Life, the Universe, and Everything by Douglas Adams. This is the 3rd book in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series. It is a sci-fi comedy, and I gave it 3 stars out of 5. My thoughts on this book are, I can't believe this is nonfiction. The fact that the true heroes of this story were, 1, the only woman character in the main cast, and my favorite character, the manically depressed robot, makes this one my favorite book of the series. In this book, the characters can't catch a break, and they are tasked with having to save the entire universe from being destroyed by the inhabitants of a very distant planet. That planet just wants to be alone. They don't want anyone around them, even though they have never been bothered before. Back to romance, because no one could stop me. Book number 11 is Leather and Lark by Bren Weaver. This is the 2nd book in the Ruinous Love series. This is a dark romance. I gave it 3.5 stars. This is a kinky book about a contract killer and a serial killer who get married to protect their families. In my opinion, it wasn't as bad or gross as the 1st book in this series, but I would still recommend checking trigger warnings. Book 12 is The Honeys by Ryan LaSala. This is a horror book, and I gave it 4 stars. I honestly, it's been a while, and I might have to raise the rating, because I had a good time reading that book. Mars has always been the lesser twin, the shadow to his sister Caroline's radiance. But when Caroline dies under horrific circumstances, Mars is propelled to learn all that he can about his once inseparable sister. While I was reading this, I truly had no idea where the story was going, and that's a good thing. It really kept me wanting to read. I really liked the story, the characters, and their relationships with each other. It was pretty interesting. It was interesting to read from Mars's perspective, as a gender fluid person at this whack-ass rich people summer camp. Book 13, The Bayou by Arden Powell. This is a historical horror. I did only give it 2.75 stars out of 5. It is a very atmospheric book, but I think it was just too much. There was too much going on, in my opinion. The book swaps back and forth between present day, 1935, and 2 decades in the past, so 1915. And also, the bayou is swelling. The Rougarou is out. There is a mysterious figure, and also a girl named Mary Beth. Bank robbers, people disappearing, a priest, water stains growing, Eugene's chronic illness. Eugene is the main character. Yeah, and also gay.
Hey, be who you are.
It takes place in small town Louisiana in 1935, and when Eugene is 12, a girl from town goes missing. And now, nearly 2 decades later, there are more dangerous things than gators. People are disappearing again, and this time, no one can find the bodies. Book number 14, Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. This is a contemporary romance, and sadly, I only gave this book 1 star. I'm so sad I didn't like this book. At some point, it became a bit of a struggle to get through. This is a story of a queer woman struggling to navigate the messy and confusing life after education and adulthood. She struggles with the fears that make us human, and the family scars that need to heal, and also longing for connection. Grace Porter is a product of her environment and the adults who failed her along the way. Struggling under the pressure of the job market and feeling burnt out, Grace flees her home in Portland for a summer in New York City with the wife she barely knows. With an emotionally distant father and a physically distant mother, Grace feels perpetually alone. I didn't enjoy the writing or pacing, and the characters felt very surface level. I loved the diversity in this book, but even with the range of representation, it felt non-committal. The characters all lacked depth, in my opinion. Book 15, Bound by Ali Hazelwood. This is a fantasy romance. I gave it 3 stars. This is an audio-only story. It was good, but I do think it was a little short, and it didn't have as much atmosphere as Ali's other books. But other than that, I really enjoyed the characters and the story. It is the story of a reluctant con artist and a professor with too many secrets bound together. Soon, Veronica, that's the main character, finds herself spending long nights with Victor, bent over rare vellum samples and obscure ink. But the con grows riskier, and Vero has to wonder, what does Victor really want? And why she can't stay away. Book 16, How to End a Love Story by Yulin Khan? I couldn't find a consistent pronunciation of the name, and like even one of the videos that I listened to was like, did we pronounce it right? And I don't know. You're supposed to tell me if you said it right. I don't know. That's why I'm here. This was a contemporary romance, and I gave it 4 stars. I had a really good time reading this book. I really enjoyed the writing and how real the characters felt and how they interacted with one another. Helen Zhang hasn't seen Grant Shepard once in the 13 years since the car wreck that killed her sister tied them together forever. Now, best-selling author Helen pours everything into her career, and Grant has done everything in his power to move on from the past, including building a life across the country. Book 17, Out on a Limb by Hannah Bottom Young. This is another contemporary romance. I gave it 3.5 stars. This is the story of Winifred Wynne McNulty. She has always been wildly independent. That is until she meets Beau, a perfect stranger at a Halloween party. And after a one-night stand changes everything, they are tied together. I go into most books blind, So I didn't know this book was an accidental pregnancy trope, which isn't something I'm a huge fan of, but I was pleasantly surprised. And I really think that has to do with the characters. And I really liked the way the two main characters interacted with each other and how they grew to love each other. The last book of January, kind of, book 18, These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This is book 1 of the Secret Shanghai universe. It's a duology. It is a historical fantasy romance, and I give it 4 stars out of 5. Another book that I think I might have to reconsider the rating, because like with the Honeys, when I think about it, I'm like, oh shit, that was so fun to read. It is an imaginative retelling of Romeo and Juliet set in 1920s Shanghai with rival gangs and a monster in the depths of the Huangpu River. I finished this book on the 30th of January with no more borrows on Hoopla, so I couldn't read the second book, and I couldn't find it on my library, and I wanted to scream. I was so upset. I was so into this book. So of course, I went to my friend's house and we played D&D for like 12 hours straight to distract myself. A second DNF has hit the towers. The Wicked and the Dead by Melissa Marr. This is a fantasy. I DNF'd this book around 20% in. The only reason I started this book was because it was a free borrow. I read the first chapter, or the first 2 chapters by myself, and then I forced my friend to listen to the first few chapters because it screamed Wattpad to me. And that's because not only, I think it was both in the first chapter, or like the first and second chapter, the mention of monkey balls, like, oh, monkey balls. It was crazy. And also shit cookies. Like, I can't. Around 20%, I got tired. The funny haha, this is written like Wattpad, just got tired. The main character was so not like other girls. The writing felt really young and repetitive. Not to mention that it felt like I was dropped into the middle of an established series, but this was the first book. And also, I'm not sure where the author is from, but I'm almost positive that they are not from New Orleans or like even Louisiana, just by some of the things that was written, specifically mainly about the cemetery. If y'all don't know, Louisiana has predominantly above ground cemeteries because of flooding. So whenever it was mentioned more than once about bodies being unearthed or unburied, I was a little confused because it wasn't like once or twice. It was like repeated that the dirt was messed with. This book is about a witch and vampires and fae set in dystopian, I think, a dystopian future in New Orleans, and maybe the whole world. The dead are rising, and the MC is one of the only people who can return them to their graves. Those are all the books that I read in January of 2026. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment down below how many books you read in January. I'm filming this in February, and I definitely won't read as many books as I did last month. 1, because I need to sleep. I can't exist the way that I was in January. And 2, mostly the sleep part. I really need to sleep.